You will shortly. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the special business meeting for the District of Squamish for Tuesday, May 19th. Holland Squallen, Quistutmet, Squamish Okmeo. As always, we're gathered to do our work today on the traditional unceded territory of the Squamish Nation. Please be advised that this council meeting is being live streamed, recorded, and will be available to the public to view on the District of Squamish's website following the meeting. If you have concerns, please notify the corporate officer present at the meeting, which is Ms. Vaughn Boudreau. Can I have someone move adoption of the agenda, please? Moved by Councillor Hamilton, second by Councillor Stoner. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And before we get underway, I just wanted to acknowledge we have Councillor French joining us remotely today. Thank you, Councillor French. If you could do, it might be a bit of a team effort to keep track of Councillor French's hand. So Councillor French, if you could use the electronic hand raise, that would be helpful in that. And if I've missed you, just shout chair and I will make sure you're on our speakers list. So we're on to item 3.1, which is the RCMP year-end presentation, and I'll turn it over to our guests.
Thank you, Mayor Herford, and thank you to the council members as well as the senior leadership from the District of Squamish. I'm here to present our 2025 year-end presentation, as well as obviously it's May already. So we're just looking into sort of the first quarter of 2026. So if you haven't met me before, a bit of a new face to the senior leadership team for the Squamish RCMP. So I'm Staff Sergeant Sascha Banks. I've been in charge of the Squamish Detachment since August of last year. I was here prior to that from 2017 to 2021. So you may have seen me or recognized me from that. I went up to Whistler for about 5 years. And then I came back down here in August when Staff Sergeant Gareth Bradley went up and took my position in Whistler. So I also have brought down my sergeant from Whistler with me, my operations sergeant, Nathan Miller. So he comes from the Whistler Detachment, has been there for many, many years, experience with CFSCU and other detachments in the Lower Mainland prior to transferring to Whistler, and has now been down in Squamish since February of this year. Very lucky to have him on the team, and we are your senior leadership team for the Squamish RCMP. The only member that would not be present today is Sergeant Jeff Shore, giving him a promotion there. He's currently busy today just on another investigational matter, but sends his regrets for not being here. I also have in the audience a familiar face. Staff Sergeant Gareth Bradley is the acting inspector for the Sea to Sky RCMP this week. And he's here in the shadows, plainclothes back there, but if we do need him, we can certainly call him up. So thank you very much for having us. So you'll see a PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to go through. I'll probably spend about 20-25 minutes, hopefully whizzing through that. I tend to get long in the tooth at times, but I will certainly save some time afterwards for probably some questions that the team has here, the council and the mayor, and be sure that we can answer those, giving you accurate time or accordance time. If you do have questions during the presentation about something that pops up on the slide, please feel free to interrupt me at any point in time. And then we can address that, or we can go back in the slide deck. This slide deck will be available post-presentation for the media and for the public if it's not already attached to the system. All right, so we'll just get started. My first page there, as you can see, is actually a challenge coin on there that we created for the Squamish RCMP. We have challenge coins in the RCMP, as well as other agencies tend to have them. And this is just one that we designed with sort of the 3 monikers that we would see all the time when we are in Squamish geographically, as well as we thought that your symbol was fantastic, so we incorporated that into our challenge coin as well. Perfect. So the Sea to Sky RCMP, as we are now calling ourselves more often than not, is an incorporated integrated detachment system with 4 detachments, including Bowen Island, Whistler, Pemberton, and Squamish. We've been integrated as long as I've been in the Sea to Sky corridor, which is about 10 years now, and integrated probably well before that. And it just allows us a model where our inspector manages all 4 detachments. And then as a staff sergeant, I'm in charge of the Squamish detachment. Gareth Bradley is in charge of the Whistler detachment, and Jim Gilmore is in charge of the Pemberton and the Bowen Island detachments. And we work all together as a senior leadership team. It works really well. We work through any accountability framework issues that we have for resource sharing, and we've worked really hard on that over the last couple of years. I think you've seen this before. So this is the RCMP strategic plan for the Sea to Sky. So several years ago, probably about 2017, 2018, we had an inspector in the Sea to Sky named Jeff Christie, and we worked hard on creating a strategic plan for the RCMP and the Sea to Sky. And out of this is more sort of the strategic plan diagram that you see here, that in 2022, we worked with the public, our partners, internally, externally, looking at the province, looking at city planning, and national planning with the RCMP to try and create a strategic plan that effectively incorporated the needs, the wishes, the wants, and sort of looking at future things that might come into play with the RCMP, for a plan that serves the community at large. And serves the Sea to Sky. So this is the overarching strategic plan for the entire 4 detachments. We do have individual planning that we'll go into a little bit later when we talk about what's coming next in our strategic plan. So this is our leadership team. I've already talked about this a little bit. Inspector Robert Dykstra sends his regrets. Unfortunately, he's away at the time right now, so he would be here, but Gareth Bradley is certainly more than ample to fill his footsteps for the time being. There's myself, Staff Sergeant Sascha Banks, Nathan Miller, who's my sergeant. Our police services manager is Kimberly Lebrance, who's here in the room. Our corporate and client services manager is Amanda Daly. She's been with the Sea to Sky for many years, and I believe was a District of Squamish employee before that. And we also have our NCO in charge of our general investigation section, Sergeant Jeff Shore. So first and foremost, this always tends to be something that is kind of like the thing that everybody wants to see, the crime stats of Squamish. So we're going to talk a little bit about the crime stats of 2025, and we're also going to talk a little bit about the stats that are going into 2026. So what you see up here is actually just a screenshot of what we call the dashboard. So the RCMP collects stats. If they do anything well, they collect stats. So, oh, sorry, I flipped a slide there. There we go. So this is just a snip of the dashboard, kind of incorporating the 2024-2025 year. Kind of gives an idea of 4 offenses in there, including persons, violent crime, property crime, other criminal code offenses, and traffic offenses. We monitor our statistics, particularly from a senior leadership team, on a very, very regular basis. And we're very lucky in the last several months, we've actually got some more real-time data in a system called Ops 360, which allows us to kind of look at things almost a day-by-day basis of whether we've seen upticks or whether we're seeing down stats where things are getting, I guess, inevitably better in certain categories. And it allows us to adjust our protocols and our mandates sort of in a real-time position. Could be week by week, month by month. We do a lot of comparisons based on the seasonal times about what it looked like this time last year to get a good comparison. As we're coming into the summer season, obviously this is a peak season for us. And so we'll compare our stats with months from years gone by, 2025, 2024, 23, and looking back into that. So it helps us to incorporate 5-year averages. So this is sort of the first statistic that we see, and I think probably this talks a lot about sort of what our members are actually responding to. So I think it's relevant for us to talk about calls for service that we are seeing within the Sea to Sky corridor, particularly within the Squamish detachment. So the 2025 ComStat that sits there, it talks about charges laid, total calls for service, and priority 1 calls. I've also included the first quarter of 2026, so that incorporates January, February, March, and sort of what we're seeing as those first 3 months are coming into the window of our statistics capturing. So I think the most important thing when it comes to calls for service is we're up 6% almost for calls for service for the 2025 5-year average. So as you can see, we probably had about 400 calls for service more in 2025 than we did in 2024. And then I think the biggest notability is that for the 2026, the first quarter of 26, we're up 30% call for service from the previous year, or for the previous average. So we're sitting at a higher mark for calls for service, and obviously that's concerning because that means more call outs for our members. Calls for service incorporate 911s, non-emergency calls, created calls by our members on proactive things such as traffic stops, or when they're doing proactive foot patrols, they may see something. So this doesn't always necessarily mean a call that's coming in from the public, but could be a proactive call that we create. So this is almost the files that we have in our system. And I think that's an important note. I also do think it's important to note the charges laid, or the total charges forwarded to Crown. We do have a reduction, that of 17% on our 5-year average, which is something that Sergeant Miller and I are doing extensive focus on to see whether or not we can find whether that's charges going forward that Crown aren't laying, whether it's any investigational standards that we have to have concerns with, whether it's staffing needs based on the inability to look at a call for service, or whether there are any other factors that we have the ability to change. And yes, that would be that step. So crime trends. So the first one I think we should talk about is violent crime. This is actually the statistic for violent crime. We're up, as you can see here, over 12%. And this is representing the same thing in the first quarter of 2026 as well. I think not only in the community of Squamish, the violent crime rates are increasing, but this is actually something that we're seeing across the board for British Columbia and the country in general. The violent crimes are increasing. So I gave a couple statistics up there where I thought it was relevant. So sexual assault, we're up 46% on the 5-year average in 2025. Assaults is seems to be stock standard. Domestic assaults, 16%. Child pornography, making child pornography, possession or distribution of child pornography is up 23%. And criminal harassment, we're seeing a 250% increase. And these are the calls that are driving our calls for service up. For 2026, we actually do have a decrease in domestic incidents so far for this year, but that usually we see those statistics increase during the summer season. So that may work its way out by the end of the 2026 statistic analysis. Does anybody have any questions on that before I move on? I know that tends to be a big one.
Yeah, Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, could you define criminal harassment for us?
So criminal harassment would be, I'll give you an example. Somebody says that somebody has been calling them repeatedly and they fear for their safety. It makes them incredibly uncomfortable. They believe that individual could be hurting them, and we would, or could potentially, based on what they're saying. So we would then contact that individual and we would say, you're required to stop reaching out to them. If you do reach out to them again, you could be charged with criminal harassment. And if they do it again, then potentially there could be a charge laid for criminal harassment.
Thanks.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Pettingill.
Just with these, like some of them, the numbers are small, and so maybe it's one person being charged multiple times with something. Is there sort of a break point where you'd say, like, this is 1 or 2 people versus no, there's a whole cohort of challenging, I guess, individuals in a category? Like, you know, total violent is much more incidents, but like, do you know what I mean? Are we able to sort of see from this, like, is there a problematic individual, or is there more of a sort of a community-wide problem in an area, I guess?
So I would say that that probably was not the case for sexual assaults. We don't have a large number of assaults being committed sexually by one individual. And if there was, then that would obviously be a concern for us, and we would distribute that information out for public safety wise. When it comes to domestic incidents, sometimes there can be repeat incidents, but I certainly wouldn't say that that's driving the stat pull forward on that. Child pornography, obviously the numbers are low, but I would consider the crimes to be quite serious in nature. So 8 is too many, 1 is too many when it comes to that category. When you're talking about violent assaults or violent incidents that occur, there are a subset of people that live in the community of Squamish that do drive some of those statistics up. And those individuals we look at for targeted enforcement, for designation of prolific offenders, for profile sheets, for actual dedicated enforcement towards those individuals. And I would say there is, the statistics of what you have 5% of the population creating 90% of the crime, or some statistic like that. I would say that we'd have to dig a little bit deeper to find actually that, but there's not one or two people that are driving that number up. There's a good handful of people that would be responsible for a good chunk of those calls, but that number is concerning.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Greenlaw.
I was just wondering if you had any comments on the increase in sexual assaults, like if there's any underlying commonality there.
Well, I don't think it's unknown that sexual assaults are commonly known to be an underreported statistic. And whether or not this has to do with work that our domestic violence sexual assault investigators or those that work in Pearl Space or our SANE nurses are doing to try and have individuals come forward that wouldn't have normally come forward. So it's a very difficult statistic to state whether or not there's an increase in sexual assaults in the community or there's an increase in reporting. I would like to say there's a good combination of the two, and I would be very proud if the fact was that more individuals felt to come forward to report these type of offenses. But I think that's a bit of an unknown statistic of whether there's an increase in actual sexual assaults or there's just an increase in that reporting structure.
Okay, any other questions at this stoppage? Okay, we'll continue on.
I thought there might be a couple
Yeah,
in that
no,
one.
thank you for that.
So when it comes to property crime, we're looking a touch better. So I've broken out multiple property crime offenses. Some of them we have a decrease, like theft from vehicles. We do have a decrease of 45% over the 5-year average in 2025. We do have a decrease of property crime in totality of almost 5%, but we do have an increase in frauds, theft of autos. So that is your entire vehicle stolen. And we also have an increase in bike theft. That bike theft, we're actually starting to see the same in 2026 of an increase in bike theft, running on pretty much the same sort of numbers that we're seeing in 2025. I also think there's probably a substantial amount of property crime that goes unreported here. I'm a citizen of Squamish myself and have been for about a decade. And there's no doubt that I see a large amount of social media posts or proactive searching for people's effects that are not reported to police. So I do think that there is a portion of that property crime that does go unreported where someone has their bike stolen and then they go looking for it within the community of Squamish. So it is something that we're looking at when we consider property crime, and there is certainly a nexus between property crime statistics and some of the violent crime statistics or those who are engaged in both categories. And we look to see if there's a factor of one driving the other or vice versa. Obviously, the theft of vehicles is a concerning number for me. We're up almost 39% for theft of vehicles. These are, people's cars that are going missing. It doesn't state the recovered number of vehicles, and I would have to dig into that. Some of them are never recovered, some are recovered. There's various reasons for this. Some of the vehicles just disappear and potentially end up at ports heading to other countries. Some of them are used for crime reasons where they're taken and used in other jurisdictions for crime. And some of them are just taken for joyride purposes from somebody to get from point A to point B that doesn't have that ride. So before I continue on any of that, do you guys have any questions about the property crime statistics? Perfect.
Yeah, I think we'll keep going. I feel like we may need to come back to this slide as we
all
went
good.
through our questions at the end, but thank you.
So this is always, I combined a couple topics on here. I combined sort of our mental health Coroners Act bylaw alongside our vehicle statistics, which not related necessarily, but I do think just combining the two makes the conversation flow quicker. So we are actually seeing our mental health calls decrease. You see a reduction of 7% over the 5-year average, as well as the Section 28. That's a full apprehension by police, where the individual is taken into a medical practitioner, a hospital setting, or a clinic setting as soon as possible. You're seeing a reduction of 10% in that. I do think that this is a bit of we're also seeing those kind of statistics happening for 2026. I do have concern that these statistics are showing a decrease because if anything, our teams out there are seeing mental health being a component of a large portion, if not over 50% of our calls for service, where even though we're attending for, say, a harassment call or we're attending for a theft call, that there is a mental health component that goes along with that. That's not necessarily being captured in what would be the primary reporting of that file. So there are some incredibly complex mental health cases of individuals that live in Squamish or visit Squamish or have showed up in Squamish, of which we find ourselves dealing with what we would consider a social chronic offender, which is somebody who drives 10 calls a week or 5 calls a week, not only for us, but usually for the BC Ambulance Service and the Squamish Hospital as well. So that is something that we're working on. We did see an increase of 8% for the overall average for Coroners Act. These are deaths in community that our members are attending to, whether it be in the backcountry, whether it be in a home. Obviously not any of them deemed suspicious in nature, so it could be natural or accidental or something that's pre-planned. So it could be somebody who is in end stages of their life when they die at home. I think it's important to go on to the next category, so collisions. So we are seeing a marked increase in collisions, and I'm going to talk a bit about some of the statistics when we talk about enforcement that I think are relevant to this, but we are seeing an increase in collisions of 9% over the 5-year average. But we actually are seeing a 64% increase in the first quarter of 2026 for collisions. So these are concerning. A lot of these are happening on the Sea to Sky Highway. They're not actually happening within the jurisdiction of Squamish. There is a portion of them happening in the jurisdiction of Squamish, but those tend to be your more fender benders. You know, somebody runs into the back of somebody because they're not looking, or maybe even we know that one of the highest collision zones on Highway 99 is Cleveland and 99. And so that could be incorporating that highway system, as well as the Mamquim Road is a common collision area as well. These draw our services extensively when it comes to collisions, particularly on the highway system, where usually there's a 2-member response that's required for them. And if serious in nature, that requires an ICARS call out. That's the Integrated Collision Reconstructive Team that come up, cause highway closures for many, many hours that we are well aware has extensive criticism from the public when that highway is closed for a lengthy period of time. I think it's relevant to talk about as well that we have, it currently says that we are 20% down on the 5-year average for impaired. We did see a large number of impaireds for 2022, 2023, but those statistics are up for 2026, and our members are driving through calls for traffic complaints, as well as doing an immense amount of proactive enforcement. As you can see on the bottom statistic, which I'm very proud to talk about the work that my members do, the general duty violation tickets, you can see we almost doubled from the previous year for the violation tickets of 2024. We did 537 to 1,039 tickets. These are tickets under the Motor Vehicle Act, where members have issued a violation ticket to members, and we're up 121% for that. You're also seeing the IRPs, that's the immediate roadside prohibition for drug impairment. We are up 216% on the 5-year average with 42 drug impairment files for 2025. Questions about that?
I'm going to start on this one. I'll come to you, Councillor Greenlaw. So those last 2 pieces, and I think it's maybe a theme that a question I have sort of throughout is the relation between like where you're directing your efforts and which ideally is where the issue is, but there's this piece where like do you think that going from 10 to 42 in the IRP drug piece, is that more people behaving poorly, or is this a focused enforcement piece that's sort of surfacing what's happening out there? And same question, I suppose, with the ticketing, like just how, and I'm sure this is something you think about often, but how do those things relate? Like what's really happening on the ground, sort of the baseline, and then what you find when you go looking for it, I guess.
Absolutely relevant question. I think it's a bit of the chicken and the egg, as it was with sexual assaults. I think the more times our members are out there in a proactive nature when they can, based on a 30% increase of calls for service, that makes it incredibly difficult to do that proactive enforcement. But when they're out there, the more cars they stop, the more times that they have a likelihood of coming across somebody who's impaired by drugs or alcohol or committing any type of motor vehicle offense. So there is a dedicated enforcement. We'll go on talking about our beat patrols where some of those roadblocks are happening. Sergeant Miller is working extensively with our team to make sure that that piece of proactive nature, that work on impaired driving, distracted driving, those roadblocks are a priority for us, particularly because it's a priority for the community in general. And it effectively, I believe, saves lives at the end of the day. That's 42 people that we got off the road because they weren't driving under the influence of drugs any further than our traffic stop.
Thank you. And my last question is, could you just, what the bylaw piece there, I think is interesting. Could you just run through how that's, there's a 15% increase there? Just what does that, what sort of things sort of fall into that category? As I know, we also have bylaw out in the field as well.
Usually that's noise complaints. It could be false alarms, which are also captured in our statistic. So as RCMP, I think the last record I knew, we have the ability to act on 271 statutes, regulations, acts, of which we have the ability to use, including, I think the Migratory Bird Act was always one. The protection of seagulls was always one I found very interesting. So within that, we're able to enforce the bylaws of the District of Squamish. So we have the ability as police officers that if bylaw officers aren't on, that we have the capacity to either provide a ticket or a warning, or often what we would do after the fact is notify the bylaw team about a complaint that we had for a call for service. It could be unlocked bins for somebody who has their garbage bins in their house in a location where bears have access to it, and that could be scored as a bylaw complaint alongside a wildlife attractants complaint. So for that, I think it's great. I think any opportunity that we have something at our fingertips to enforce the regulations, particularly of the community that they have decided on, is a benefit for us.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Greenlaw, then Pettingill.
Yeah, thanks. Again, just going back to that comment you made about the collisions, I think you said there is an over 60% increase in the first quarter of 2026. And I was just wondering if you had any comments on that, like what's causing it? Is it speed? Are they out of town people, or anything there that could be causing those?
So I haven't dug deep a ton into that collision statistics. It was sort of something that I even noted today when I was going through some of the 2026 first quarter. That's certainly something that we'll be looking into, whether or not it's speed. I know historically there's always been the belief from the community members or the public in general that tires tend to be the primary cause during the winter months, which effectively would be January, February, March. And we don't often see that out there. That's not normally something that we're seeing as being a cause of a collision. It's often driving too fast for conditions, driving too fast on the curves and the bends that we have. There's no doubt that there are high collision zones on our highway system that are south of town, including Porta Cove, Britannia Beach, Lions Bay, as well as seeing those collision areas within the District of Squamish, incorporating Cleveland, Mancomb, and all the way up to Alice Lake. So that's certainly something I think is important for us to look into. As Councillor Pettingill mentioned, that could be a statistic going up from 10 to 15. So although it sounds like a large increase in collisions, when you look at the percentage number, it could just be 5 more collisions. And what does that look like? There's nothing that's popping out immediately from my knowledge of our files that we do attend to. I do know that our statistics for not only our own enforcement, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, but the enforcement of the BCHP, that's the BC Highway Patrol Squamish, have massively increased. And so even with this huge percentage of increase of enforcement, we're still not seeing that reduction in collisions.
Thank you. Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, thanks. And I may be jumping ahead, but I've sort of lost track of where we are in terms of Car 99 and how often that's used. Is that a factor in the mental health numbers we're seeing, or can you speak to sort of, I guess, Car 99 in general?
So I will be talking about Car 99 in a little bit, but I certainly will address the merits of Car 99 right off the hop. This is an incredible program. For those who don't know what Car 99 is, it's a mental health police officer who has training in mental health files, as mixed with we have only nurses here. They can be clinicians with Vancouver Coastal Health. We have 2 nurses that work with our team 5 days a week, and they are instrumental to our work with those in the community that struggle with mental health and addictions, or both at the same time. They work consistently to access our information, their information, to come up with a holistic approach about whether or not that individual needs to be apprehended, needs to seek additional health, or have contact with their providers to make sure that we can get them the best support that they need.
Okay, back to you.
Amazing. So that's the statistics for 2025. But we're going to go into a couple things. So we're going to talk about enhancing public safety. And although my sergeant believes this is an AI image, this is not. One of our members who used to be here, named Kyle Cameron, incredible photographer, took that picture, and we use his pictures as stock photos now going forward. So not AI. I'm not that savvy. So I want to talk a little bit about our enforcement efforts when it comes to enhancing public safety. Public safety is a hot button topic as of late, and it's a topic of which I take heavily into account when considering any strategic planning, any focus for the detachments, as well as Sergeant Miller and Sergeant Shore, alongside Staff Sergeant Gareth Bradley as well. This is something that is paramount for us. It is something that we take incredibly seriously, and it's how we direct our policing services, whether it be on a weekly, daily, monthly, or yearly basis. So just a bit of an idea about when it comes to enforcement of sort of what we're doing and how we're doing business currently, and how that looks a little bit different than we've done it in years gone by. So when it comes to enforcement, the RCMP comes with an incredible diverse set of partners within the law enforcement world that we get to work with and we get to access. And I think that's the benefit of having the Squamish having the contract with the RCMP for their police of jurisdiction, is we do have these services at our fingertips 24/7, 365. So we do share a lot of information with Arctic. That's the Real-Time Intelligence Center. They run out of Green Timbers in the Lower Mainland. And we access them all the time we just accessed them not that long ago. They would look at social media to see if there's any concerns that are popping up online for anything to do with firearms or anything to do with concerning behavior. And that can happen at 3 o'clock in the morning, or that can happen at 9 o'clock a.m. on a Monday morning. We also work with the CFSCU, that's the Combined Forces Special Enforcement Unit Analyst Team. We work with them regularly. We have a thing called PTEP, which is a Prolific Targeted Offender Program, of where we can identify individuals in the community of Squamish that may drive up our violence statistics, like Councillor Pettingill had talked about earlier. And we do a dedicated enforcement on them with our own teams, alongside some of the teams from the Lower Mainland and the province. We also, in the last several months, created a new team within the Squamish Detachment, the Vulnerable Persons Unit. This team is incorporated of a corporal who has special training in sex crimes and domestic violence. And they work within our general investigations team, and there's a constable that's on that team as well. The idea of this is we've got past the one designated position that the Squamish Council approved us to have. Oh, it's got to be, 9 years ago now? And I had the privilege, when I was on the SOWIT team, the Squamish Outreach team, of having that position come into my team for the first time in 2018. I was very proud when that position came on board, but we're sort of at that next phase of that position, where the Vulnerable Persons Unit takes control of all things such as child sex crimes, child offenses, child pornography. So you would have what we call our BC ICE files, so our integrated child exploitation files. They take in the domestic files, sexual assaults, really, really heavy work, really, really important work, and really, really high risk work if things aren't done correctly. So it's a bit of a quality assurance for the rest of the team to have these specialized individuals in there, and having the oversight of Sergeant Shore, who has incredible expertise in investigations, is essential to make sure that we can provide everything we can for proper, timely, accurate investigations for those who are the most vulnerable in our communities. And so that team is up and running. Corporal Virginia Bassett is in charge of that team. She has an extensive major crimes background, and I have no doubt that we'll see big things from that team in the coming months. We also have a realignment of our community teams. So my old SOWIT team that I brought up many, many years ago has now been transferred and transformed into the crime reduction team. This is a change in dynamics because we do have an increase in certain categories of property crime, an increase in violent crime, and we needed to change directions to make sure that we have a different focus on that team. So it is my priority to make sure that that team is up and running to the best of its ability. We will be seeing Corporal Adam Cayley heading into that team in the coming months. And it is going to have a very focused element on those prolific offenders, on those high crime zones. When we're seeing maybe a rash of theft of vehicles, they would sort of parachute in, effectively identify, do surveillance, and tackle that piece of that. Does that come at a bit of a sacrifice of some of the community elements that we so pride ourselves on? It does a little bit. And that's a hard thing for me to stomach because as it's always been at the core of who I was, even as a constable, to have that community engagement piece. But at this stage of the game, when it comes to the statistics that sit in front of us, we have to act on it and we have to do things about it. And so for the time being, although we work to be in the schools and we work to be at community events, that might not be as consistent as we have seen in years gone by. We're also seeing ourselves increasing our work alongside the CFSEU gang teams. Now I know that's a tough word to stomach when you look at the uniformed gang enforcement teams. I have one of their little pictures there alongside the emergency response team and the integrated police dog services. These are teams that, yet again, as your RCMP of jurisdiction that we have access to. The emergency response team was in town last week. They have an incredible skill set to make sure that not only the public comes out of that safely, but our team comes out safely and those involved come out safely. They just come along with a different skill set than what we have. And I also think it's great for our members to work beside them to learn from them. We're very lucky for that. And the CFSEU gang teams, they've been in town. They work in town. They were just here about a month ago. And our projection is to work with them consistently in the coming months to have them here. They just have a different intellectual database than we do. They have a savvy that I think is important. We are really close to the Lower Mainland and some of that nexus drives up the corridor. There's no doubt several years ago, we had a very high profile gang homicide in Whistler, of which our team in Squamish, myself and Sergeant Miller were up in Whistler at that time. And the Squamish team affected the arrest of those individuals. And that trial is happening in the next couple months. So it's important to have that intelligence pool. It's important for the public to know that we're working with them. And I think it does nothing but just drive that intelligence into the community. And the more police officers we can have on the ground, I think the better off we are for it. I think the last statistic is a really important statistic to drive forward when we talk about these collisions. So there is a massive increase, and I've talked to the mayor and I've talked to the CAO about this in private settings, but we're going to talk about this openly, that the BC Highway Patrol presence on Highway 99 has exponentially increased in the last kind of 12 to 18 months. Corporal Sherry Weeks is in charge of that unit, and she's done an excellent job at bringing their team up to full staffing. There is a massive increase in excessive speed tickets that are being given out on Highway 99. I'm not just talking about violation tickets, so that just your regular basic speeding ticket or somebody without a license or somebody driving without an N on or anything like that. I will give you a statistic. In 2024, we had 59 excessive speeds that were documented on our system. For 2025, we had 475 excessive speed tickets, of which a large portion of those were given out by BC Highway Patrol. And in already up to May of 2026, we're seeing 527 tickets on excessive speed. We're talking towing, people driving 40 kilometers above the speed limit, and they're getting towed. I saw it this weekend when I was up and down the corridor. Going into Vancouver. These are still happening and we're still seeing this, and this is consistent. So you're talking about a statistic of almost a 750% increase in excessive speed tickets happening up the Sea to Sky corridor, alongside probably a slew of violation tickets, which is not decreasing our collisions. And you're seeing a massive increase, almost 100% increase of our members giving out violation tickets, which yet again is not moving that radar when it comes to collisions. So I think it's important to talk about their efforts of what they're doing out there, and they continue to do day in and day out. A very talented team at doing what they do. They have a motorcycle in the unit, and they work alongside our members to provide that intelligence piece as well of how to do these traffic type investigations. of which we have quite a junior team on the front line, of which benefit from that. All right. Checking my time. I'll try and spin through this a little bit quicker because I know we're getting a little short on time. So I just want to highlight some of the Sea to Sky RCMP major crimes unit. So this is the team that's run by Sergeant Jeff Shore. This is just to highlight some of the files they've been working on. So they have a considerable number of BCI's files. Now, although 11 in 2025 don't sound like a lot, and we have 7 already in 2026, they are incredibly complex files to deal with. They usually deal heavily with production orders, search warrants, safety concerns when it comes to obviously those who could potentially be at risk in these. And they're very difficult files on our team. So the members who investigate these files have to look at these images. They have to categorize these images. And sometimes there can be 10,000 of them, videos, photographs. They're complex files. These type of files will transfer from the general investigations team to the vulnerable persons team, like I had talked about earlier. But one is too many. I also want to talk a little bit about the illegal tobacco file that we had that was close to the Tim Hortons off Garibaldi Way. That was a file from this summer, as well as a helicopter crash. They worked alongside the Transportation Safety Board at Henriette Lake. That was above the wood fiber LNG site. And the Squamish Sea to Sky GIS team continue to focus on factors driving up violent crime. They currently have the investigation that's on the way right now at one of our encampments in town. That happened this morning, as well as they were the driving force of the file from last week, where they were also in that area. So they're busy people. I think the biggest thing with that team is where to focus their efforts and where to make sure that they can make an impact. The investigations that the general investigation team monitors and completes take a very, very long time, have very difficult disclosure factors that go along with it. They're incredibly complex and usually involve a project type status. And I'm very proud of the work that Sergeant Shore and his team have done and continue to do. There you go, Councillor Pettingill, car 99. So there's Nurse Zoe and Constable Khan. They are our car 99 team, and that's just a little picture of them working as their team. You've probably seen them out there. So Zoe and her cohort Tina, they both have a bulletproof vest. Unfortunately, there's a risk component that comes along with being on car 99, but it says nurse on it. That's clearly displayed. So this is just a little bit of a conversation about education and prevention. So local training continues to be a priority for our team. Sergeant Miller is certainly working extensively on that to make sure our team has everything that they need. We have a training coordinator within the Sea to Sky RCMP now to make sure there's a equal training plan that's given to everybody. Make sure that we have, each watch has certain types of skills that are needed, whether it be field sobriety testing, whether it be spike belts, that is distributed equally throughout the watches. We are also doing a car 99 review at this stage of the game with VCH. The idea is it's a 1 year into inception, and I think you should always do a review of what's working, what's not working, and how do we drive that program forward, continuing to modernize it, address the issues that are coming up in the community, and take a look at what other factors we could do and other ways we could do business. The car is not going anywhere. It is an integral part of our team. And I'm very proud to have it. And Zoe and Tina do an excellent job. Sergeant Miller is also working on a proactive patrol model for seasonal policing and operational planning for events that are increasing in size in Squamish. This is an important thing, the seasonal policing approach. It's already begun. We started over the May long weekend. We already saw some quite serious events that were happening in the Squamish Valley, and these draw our resources, although not district to Squamish boundaries. They do draw our resources up into that area, so we are using a provincial operational policing model to ensure that we are fiscally responsible to the budget, and working on that side of things to proactively be out there at places like Cat Lake, Brome Lake, Levitt Lake, Lucille Lake, although Levitt Lake I believe is closed right now, up the Squamish Valley, and working with our partners such as park rangers and SAR and things like that for issues that we are seeing in the backcountry. I believe there's multiple calls into the backcountry this weekend for our Squamish SAR. I can think of 4 already. We had a serious incident up the Squamish Valley that our members are currently investigating. So that is something that is super important. I'm going to continue on. We're going to zip through these. This is just a couple files that we, training and SAR files, boat files. Continuing on, making sure we have time. So employee excellence and workplace culture, these are all things that we try and, create a good workplace for all of us. So NCO training day happened in 2025. We're planning a constable training day, awards and recognition committees, streamlined public complaint processes. We have a PRU investigator, Reserve Constable Steve Leclerc. He does the majority of these investigations for us and has an extensive skill set to be able to make sure that he has a very independent viewpoint of what people are concerned about. And we had a commanding officer award for a Squamish member based on the Whistler homicide investigation. Workplace culture, we did the Cram the Cruiser event in December. We had continual feedback of our senior leadership team by our teams with surveys and one-on-ones. And last year in March, we did the guns and hoses again, which was nice to see against fire. I believe we won. So Staff Sergeant Bradley was the coach of that team, so give credits to him. And we also, as you saw at the front page, had the creation of a Sea to Sky Challenge coin for Squamish. So this is the Squamish. This was actually created in a consultation meeting with community members of Squamish, and we had somebody do that art at the time that people were expressing their concerns about where we thought we should be. I think some of this is still relevant today, but we're going to talk a little bit about that accountability and governance as we go forward. So the Squamish RCMP is about to launch a new partnership consultation for a new strategic plan this year going into next year. Obviously, as you saw, our strategic plan ends in 2028. So we're getting ahead of the curve and making sure that we have those town halls, those partnership town halls, and that ability for the public to engage with us across all 4 detachments, including Squamish. Sergeant Miller and Staff Sergeant Bradley are at the core of making sure that that happens. So you'll see some of that community consultation in the coming months. My assumption would be probably not till the fall, but that will be coming. So TBD. We're also seeing a management accountability framework. We talked about this fiscal responsibility of who pays for what. So what are the Squamish citizens paying for through their contract with the RCMP? And I'm very accountable to make sure, as is Sergeant Miller and Staff Sergeant Bradley and Sergeant Shore, that if it's happening outside of the jurisdiction of Squamish, that it's being paid for by the right budget. And if we have resource sharing, where we're bringing members from major crimes up in Whistler, and they're coming into Squamish, what does that look like? And there's an accountability framework for that, or vice versa. And so Sergeant Miller is at the helm of that with Inspector Dykstra, and that should be coming to council presentations coming soon, near you. We also have continued leadership training. Several of us attended a police leadership conference in Vancouver through the BCACP. That's the BC Association of the Chiefs of Police. I know we have lots of acronyms, so I don't want you to get lost on all of that. There's a test at the end. And we also had Road Hub. So this is a really integral thing that we have now come into a corporation, and the Sea to Sky corporate team created it. It's kind of a one-stop shop for us. It's a SharePoint website where we can go to everything and all the forms we need and all the statistics we need. And the District of Squamish community plan, there's a link for that. There's a link for everything. So it's a bit of a one-stop shop for us. And I think it's been really instrumental at those 271 acts and those many district models and those many factors that we have to go to. It's all listed there, all the forms we need to make the world work. And our Sea to Sky corporate team has been amazing at putting that together. And it has been instrumental for streamlining things for us as we get the tech coming up on that side of things. So we also have effective and countable strategic operational planning for community events, seasonal policing, and the new crime reduction team, beat patrols. So this is the last slide. So I'll give you, 10 minutes to ask me questions after that. So looking forward into 2026. So our crime reduction team creation, we have changed some of our proactive policing models. We currently do what we would call the beat patrols or the neighborhood patrols, where we do a focused patrol system where it's 2 members that go out there that focus on doing, whether could it be that the community is concerned about e-bikes, which they are concerned about e-bikes, And so that day, there could be a portion of the day that's focused towards e-bike enforcement. Is there a concern about impaired driving because we have an event going on that night that needs some focused roadblocks? Could there be a concern about the encampments in the community, and we need to have that focused enforcement, that focused intelligence gathering, and that focused connection to those individuals that live in those encampments? And that is a lot of what that is happening. That is outside of regular frontline duties. And that is separate, and that's been ongoing now for a couple months. And it's been instrumental in us getting that intelligence piece, working with our partners in the community and getting a good idea about what we're seeing out there. The Vulnerable Persons Unit creation, so it's obviously in its infancy. And then we have the Heart and Hearth that is coming into fruition in 2026. And then we have a new strategic plan consultation with the public, a dedicated seasonal policing plan. Our human resources, knock on wood, are stabilizing at the moment, which is integral for us to be able to do our day-to-day jobs. We have body-worn cameras coming into the detachment. Currently, it's projected for fall of 2026, but FIFA is pushing things back a little bit on that. And then we also have a streamlining of our municipal employee responsibilities. Kimberly Lebrentz is certainly working through trying to make sure our teams are cross-trained where they need to be and doing what they need to be doing, ensuring that we can do our day-to-day jobs effectively. And that is all she wrote. Questions?
Thank you very much. Council, questions? Councillor Stoner, go ahead.
Thank you, the chair. Really appreciate the fulsome update. It's great to have you in council chambers with all the numbers. It's always a presentation that I write the most notes about, and I actually ended my notebook on this one. A few questions. Appreciate the additional effort that's going into the excessive speeding tickets. Those numbers are still like pretty eye-opening in terms of both the increase in ticketing and then the continued impact of collision. So I guess I'm just curious, great to have more folks out on the road, great to do the enforcement. And what else do we do from here? I know we've had a little bit of conversation over the years around speed over distance and doing cameras in terms of advocacy work to the province. I think we've seen more community feedback on the implications of the shutdowns of the road for longer periods of time and the impact that has on community. And so I'm trying to think outside the box here of like, absolutely, let's throw more resources, but it's not driving the results that we need. And so what are the other options that we can start talking about?
I think we're increasing it too, and you're still not seeing a drive down in statistics for collisions. That inevitably would lead you to believe that enforcement is not the way to drive down those statistics. So you do need to think outside the box, and you need to think outside of what we do normally. Now, it's no secret where these collisions happen. That data is accessible by the public on provincial websites. It's done every year about where those high collision zones are. I am working on striking up a highway working group of where partners, including parks, Miller Capilano, natural resource officers, and those who would have sort of the information of what that looks like, to try and find out some of these high collision zones and what could be done with the Ministry of Transportation on changing the structure of that highway. Now, time over distance, that has been talked about probably since I got here well back when. I do know Lions Bay has been a heavy proponent of that. And that is definitely a provincial decision that comes in from that. And at this stage, I don't believe there is a cohesive voice on whether or not that would sort the speed issues that we are seeing on the Sea to Sky Highway. This isn't new. Like, this isn't a new issue. We're just actually seeing the numbers in front of us when it comes to those excessive speeds. So I think that is a good marker for showing kind of what the problem is. We have some of these cars that drive up the Sea to Sky are going incredibly high speeds. The motorcycles, the cars, concerning for not only the individual who's driving, but those who are around them. We had an unfortunate fatal motorcycle collision that happened over the summer where speed was a factor in that collision. And although no other individuals were injured aside from obviously the motorcycle driver unfortunately lost his life. There's everybody else around them that gets traumatized from that type of incident that's occurring. And so it leaves a bit of a wake in its aftermath. So I do think that we have work going forward. And I think we do all have a collective voice of that piece. And we'll continue to get out there to show the statistics that we're seeing to inevitably help to put that collective voice together.
Yeah, thanks for your leadership on that. I'm definitely interested in continuing the conversation there on what those creative solutions might be going forward. I have two other questions. The first is around current staffing levels and staffing complement. I know this is something that we've been challenged with in the past, and we've added some additional officers over the past few years. But I think if I remember correctly, in the past budget, there were still quite a few vacancies as a result. So I'm just curious if you can update us on where we're at in terms of staffing complement relative to what we have available in the budget and what's actually available through your team.
So I think we always call that the FTEs, the STEs, full-time establishment or surplus to establishment. So Squamish is coming into, it's always a knock on wood thing. I hate to talk about it because it's like the sky drops, right? When you start saying you're in a good place. We just recently received 2 cadets from Depot, and we just received several within the last 6 months prior to that. We also have several corporal vacancies that exist within the Squamish Detachment, and we have several members who are off on long-term sick leave. Other than that, we are looking good for our staffing levels. Obviously, as that happens, the goal is that these specialty units like the Vulnerable Persons Unit and the Crime Reduction Unit then become fully staffed because that allows us to do the way we do business to a more beneficial way for the community and for our team as well. So we are looking good. It's like saying the Q word, right? But I would hope to see, and my goal always is, and my goal was in Whistler, is that you will see the FTE number increase to, my hope is 100% in the sort of the next 6 to 12 months.
Okay, that's encouraging to hear. Thanks. And then I am just curious if you can speak a little bit more to the shift of the community. What were we calling it? The
Crime reduction team?
community reduction, or the community harm reduction team to the community crime prevention team.
Yeah.
And what that looks like on the ground in terms of engagement, I think particularly with the encampment or the multiple encampments that we're seeing across community, and how that integrates with the forward-looking component of Heart and Hearth as presented up here for your team and from your perspective.
That's a loaded question. So I'll address the first part of it. So obviously, given the statistics and obviously given some of the increases in complex individuals in the community, including the drive up of calls for service and violent crimes, it was essential to not necessarily create a new team, but re-diversify our community team to a crime reduction team to see if that piece of it and that expertise and that particular set of skills could drive down some of those numbers or identify those individuals that are causing those marked numbers in violent crime. Like Councillor Pettingill talked about before, are we seeing a set of prolific offenders that are doing this? And is there a way for us as police to effectively hold those who are creating these crimes to account? And so at this stage, they do a portion of community policing where they are going into the schools to talk about maybe consent issues or radwagon issues. The crime reduction team won't just focus on encampments, although that is a portion of what they do. There's a whole other things that the community is concerned about. And so it'd be those concerns that will be driving what the direction of that team is doing. It's in its infancy, so that funnel is a little bit bigger than what we would normally see as those mandates come tighter and tighter. Sergeant Miller, Sergeant Shore, and myself are certainly working through that, as we will with Corporal Cayley when he gets into that position, to sort of see where that ends up in sort of the next 6 to 12 months. And we'll make sure to keep Mayor and Council update with that. Its connection to Heart and Hearth, I think that's going to be a wait and see type thing. There's no doubt that we will hold a place as senior leadership on the Heart table for how the Hearth program rolls out in the community of Squamish. alongside Squamish Helping Hands and the District of Squamish and those other partners that would be at that table. And public safety will be paramount for that and what that looks like or wherever it may show up, as well as addressing some of the other issues that we do have with those who are more vulnerable and unhoused currently in the community.
I just want to dig into follow up with a question here, and then I'll go to Councillor Anderson. I see your hand, Councillor French, as well. If I could go back to the community team, to the crime reduction team, could I understand the change? If you had to express, but I also hear that the crime reduction team is doing some of the community outreach stuff. Like, could you? I know this, we dealt with some exact numbers earlier, but just generally, is it like, what does that change look like? Was it before 80% community and 20% enforcement? And has it been a full scale sort of inverting of those numbers, or is it something else? And I'm just.
That's exactly the goal. It would be 80% community, 20%, some of that assist to files that required some of that continual work, maybe tasking, maybe some of the bigger files that would come in that they would assist to sort of that flip of 20% community and 80% crime reduction. We don't have the manpower currently to create our own community team, although that is something in the future that we would be looking at. I think you know me from sitting before this council before. Community engagement is an essential part of the way that we do our job. It is essential for those bucket filling moments that we have, and that mayor for a day or that fire hall open house, or we had an open house in 2018, was probably one of the most incredible days in my career. These things are really, really important to us, but at this time, other things have taken precedence over that. And therefore, we have to switch the way we do business for the time being, with the hopes that that piece will come back on board when that kind of settles down, or where we get that piece in play to effectively deal with what we currently standing in front of us.
Okay, so it is that 80, 20, and that's why it's so palatable, that the change. We're not moving from a 50-50 to a 60-40.
They're specially trained, right? They're trained in surveillance. They're trained in, search warrant executions. They run the prolific offender teams. They have that intelligence pool on that base that I think is just where we're transitioning in Squamish as the community is growing. So does the crime types grow, or the increase in that, and we need to modernize alongside what we're seeing in front of us.
Well, thank you. Getting to those rough numbers was helpful to understand. So I'm going to go to Councillor Anderson, then French.
Thank you. My question will concern the use of volunteers, or perhaps also auxiliary officers, in community policing. Last year at the presentation from the RCMP, I asked this question, and Staff Sergeant Bradley gave me an answer, a brief description of what I understood then to be an active program. I am still a little bit puzzled. I'll give a background as to why I'm asking. We have downtown residents in particular concerned about inappropriate behaviors in public places, doorways to apartment buildings, this sort of thing. They drop into the mayor's drop-in. We get lots of letters mentioning these types of incidents. We had a community policing office some years ago on downtown on Cleveland, where also the Crime Stoppers program was based. I had interviewed, in fact, probably about 2 years ago, the chair of Crime Stoppers, and at that time they were winding up the organization. It no longer exists as an ongoing society. The District of Squamish website concerning the RCMP has Crime Stoppers. It's out of date, and the Facebook page for Crime Stoppers hasn't had an entry in 4 years. So it makes me curious, because I do also encounter individuals who come forward who may have been a part of that program or have experience as a volunteer in community policing in Vancouver or here, and they regret that to them it appears that there's not the opportunities that they would like to see for them to step forward to assist in neighborhood patrols and this sort of thing. And of course, we must emphasize that it must be individuals with certain skill set and experience to take on these types of roles. May I ask then, can you give a description of the current state of integrating volunteers and these types of patrols as part of a program in local community policing efforts? Thank you.
So you talk about many different type of programs. There's many different pieces in there. including satellite offices, of which I'll probably address last. So the Block Watch program is not a program that's run by the RCMP, is a program that is run privately or through the province. I'm not entirely sure. So that would be one program I know that was up and running, and I do believe is still up and running, but it is not effectively run by the RCMP. And so that does still exist. When you talk about the auxiliary program, there was obviously an unfortunate incident a number of years ago now in Alberta, which effectively brought down the auxiliary program within the country. And it has come back on board now with the potential of doing an auxiliary program, but is incredibly labor intensive from our end to bring that program up and running. Those who were auxiliaries in our program before have long expired on any qualifications that they would have. And it could be potentially something that we would look at in the future when it comes to auxiliary police officers. So that looks a little bit different when it comes to auxiliaries versus sort of your neighborhood patrols. I've heard that mentioned in social media before. Obviously, I do have concerns about some of the patrols and the ability to effectively deal with things that are happening in front of them and putting themselves at risk, which is something I would never want them to do. Crime Stoppers is also not an RCMP run program, but it is a program that still exists, even though there was a local portion of it. An individual who I worked closely with when I was on the Squamish outreach team, that program's still up and runs. You can still call Crime Stoppers and you can still leave anonymous messaging, which is tips for incidents that you saw that you want to remain anonymous. That program still exists. You can still call in, and I'm sure you can go onto a website or text these tips. That program still is up and running, but yet again is not an RCMP run program and is run off of a completely different deck. When it comes to our accessibility in the downtown core, the satellite office was closed actually in the time that I was here. And the rationale for closing that office was that it just couldn't effectively fit our team in there. There was no parking. I think we were taking a parking spot in front of the martial arts, which was never a popular place for us to park. And it didn't fit our departmental security standards. So at that time, it was decided that that office would shut and it would effectively be turned over to the District of Squamish, which I think is used in that capacity to this day. Now, am I open to the conversation and would I welcome the conversation of bringing a satellite office back into the downtown core? Absolutely. One that fits the team, one that has a front counter that people can come into, one that's close to some of these areas of where more vulnerable population exists or where the public can come in to express their concerns. Absolutely, I would be open to that discussion and I'm welcome to that discussion. And my hopes would be is that something that we can look at for the not too distant future.
Thank you very much.
Councillor French.
Thanks, Mayor Herford. I was hoping you might talk a little bit about the Car 99 program and how it is functioning, operating within and around encampments. Are the Car 99 team members spending significant amounts of time around the encampment? Could you just expand a bit on that?
Car 99 program, does it spend time in the encampment proactively? I wouldn't say it spends time in the encampment systems. There's not just one in Squamish, there's multiple that live within the boundaries of the District of Squamish. They tend to, they don't necessarily tend to the location, but the individual. So whether that individual accesses the services, that would be it under one roof, or they live in the encampment, or they've just popped into Squamish and have now come across the Connect with Us. That's usually what drives the attendance for Car 99. So it's usually a call for service for an individual, like Councillor Anderson talked about, where somebody may find somebody having unusual outside behavior that prompts a public member to call for us, and then that would usually draw the services for Car 99. So they don't necessarily go to the location and talk to that group like an encampment. They are driven towards a location based on an individual call for service. So there could be somebody complaining about somebody at Pavilion Park that's exhibiting unusual behaviors and believed to be a mental health component. Our team would go there, our frontline team, to assess to make sure it's safe. And then the Car 99 program would come in afterwards to make sure that if there was a mental health component that could be addressed by the nurse or an assessment that has been made by the nurse, to allow us either to get to an apprehension level or to get them to a referral level where they can seek the support that they need, then that is done. So I don't have the numbers in front of me where that would be driven by a location. From my experience of seeing the CAR program, are there a large portion of vulnerable individuals that are unhoused that the CAR 99 program deals with? And I would say, yes, there is.
Yeah, that's great context. Thank you.
Do you have a follow-up? Was it on this? The last slide had I think the only piece of it that we hadn't spoken about at length was FIFA, and just what impact do you see that event having on your I guess ability to respond throughout FIFA here in Squamish?
Well, I think that's a bit of a crystal ball question. I think we would all like to know what FIFA is going to do to the District of Squamish or the Sea to Sky corridor in general. I think we're sort of taking it based on what we would have seen in the Vancouver 2010 Olympics, although that also incorporated a winter season, which effectively would mitigate some of the individuals coming into the Sea to Sky. Myself and Sergeant Miller and Staff Sergeant Bradley particularly is in communication with the FIFA 2026 team to make sure that we are assessing our resources during that time, as well as potentially any deployments into Vancouver for some of the games that we're seeing. We have a big whiteboard in Sergeant Miller's office where all the games are laid out about what dates those look like and what could potentially happen day before, day of, and the day after of those events. I think particularly the first game is Australia versus another country. Can't remember which one it is, but we have a lot of Australians in the Sea to Sky corridor. So there'll be a lot of individuals watching that game at that time. I think the projection for us is we believe probably summer season to start June 12th or June 11th. I think that's the first game is June 12th. And we're probably going to see some of that pressure that we would see in the Sea to Sky corridor, particularly in our backcountry areas, which effectively would come through Squamish. We'll start to see that a lot earlier than we would have seen that prior to. But we have the ability to monitor this real time with the FIFA 2026 team, which is a very, very large planning team out of the Lower Mainland and across the country to be able to address issues that pop up. And if we are seeing something different, that those resources will be provided to us or they will be deployed into other jurisdictions or other locations within the Sea to Sky corridor where that is needed. So it's a bit of a to be determined, but we feel prepared for it.
Yeah, thank you for that. That was a fulsome response. I was thinking initially from the deployment perspective, if any of our resources were going to be are planned to be drawn down into Vancouver at this point, but that's part of that sounds like it's part of the wait and see approach. Is that?
We have received some requests, but they're very minimal in nature, then we don't believe they'll affect our frontline team.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Stone, I saw Hannah just before that. I just want to, we are over time. So if we could start working towards a resolution, which would be likely to receive, but go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Just a few more follow-up questions. I'm just wondering if you can clarify kind of what is happening now in terms of RCMP engagement with Community Roundtable, Helping Hands. It made it seem like that was not happening to date, and that's kind of a new initiative, but I had understood that there was actually an existing roundtable. So I just want to clarify if the RCMP has been involved in that roundtable as of recent, or if this is entirely new.
I'm not sure which roundtable you're talking about. Is that the CAT team, the Community Action
The
Team?
Community Action Team.
So that is a completely different mandate than what I would consider a roundtable. That Community Action Team is, I believe, got a funding structure for reducing stigma for those who are the most vulnerable in our community, whether it be a roundtable to talk about the problems that exist currently within that population that could potentially be driving up some of the more concerning files that we have as of late. That is something I think is a conversation for the coming weeks. I know Squamish Helping Hands is open to that. I know the District of Squamish is open to that, as well as our other partners. And I would probably see something in the capacity that you're talking about when it comes to addressing sort of the concerns and the problems probably coming in the near future.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. My other clarifying question was just around the seasonal policing capacity and what that looks like. Because I think in the past I'd heard it was just one additional FTE from a provincial side. So I'm just curious what we sit at now when we talk about the summer seasonal capacity? What does that look like in our community?
So the summer seasonal plan, which Sergeant Miller has drafted already, and that is all under the provincial budget. The majority of that is on that budget when it comes to that resourcing out in the provincial areas, allowing our frontline members to do what they need to do. And that is respond to calls for service within the District of Squamish boundaries. Obviously, for events like Pride Parade, Sikh Parade, the Feather Shakedown, things like that, there are separate planning. Canada Day, other festivals that are occurring within the community. Those are things that we have separate resource asks that we make sure that we are fully staffed, usually on an overtime basis, to bring those resources in. And then obviously the hope is that although the Farmer's Almanac is detecting a dry season, that we still continue to have January, and that will mitigate some of the wildfire asks or potentially wildfires in our jurisdiction.
Councillor Pettingill?
Yeah, just a question that I think some folks who are watching might have, and just I'm wondering if you can speak to where the funding for the local RCMP comes from, and then as we saw your strategic plan, the district has a strategic plan, but sort of the operational directives for the RCMP, where does that come from? Where does that authority come from?
So I think it's a bit of a combined effort. Obviously, we are the Squamish RCMP. There's a portion of us that live in the detachment that are municipally funded under the municipal budget, as approved by the mayor and council, and that sits at a certain number of members. I think it's roughly around 29, 30 right now. And then we have a complement that live in the detachment that are provincially funded. So there are provincial members that work inside the detachment alongside us, effectively allowing us to respond to calls for service outside of the District of Squamish boundaries, making sure that there's a fiscal accountability to that model. Sergeant Miller is working on a management accountability framework. So if there is any of that resource sharing where we draw a resource from Whistler, and what does that look like? Almost like an IHIT model where we support the IHIT team, that's the integrated homicide team, for the first 72 hours. And then after that, they come in with their funding structure from there. When it comes to some of the, it's a very diverse. Are there national RCMP directives and strategic plans? Everybody's got a strategic plan nowadays. It's the buzzword, right? You've got the national RCMP with a strategic plan. You've got the provincial RCMP, the BC RCMP with a provincial strategic plan. You've got the Lower Mainland District of the RCMP with their own strategic plan. And then we've got ours. Now, I would say I would pride ourselves, probably since 2017, we have worked alongside our communities and our council specifically to create a strategic model which effectively incorporates the needs, the wants, the wishes of the community and what it looks like. And so the input from council and from our partners, including our NROs and our DFOs and our conservation and community members, or it could be VCH, all these partners come in to create what is inevitably our priorities going forward for usually what is the next 5 years. So there's an incorporation of a lot of different sides. Do we then have a reporting structure back to the LMD RCMP and the BC RCMP and the national? Yes, we do. But we usually incorporate what they're looking for, and it usually resonates and is what we're asking for and what we're looking for locally. But I think we pride ourselves in creating your RCMP model, which services the community of which we work and live.
Thank you. Is that a motion I'm seeing from over here? I'll allow the question if you can finish it with a motion. Go ahead.
All right. So thanks very much for the presentation. And the focus on public safety, absolutely appreciated and valued. It made me think, what are the areas of greatest concern or greatest concern for officer safety, not for community safety? Your officers are out there keeping us safe. And the reason for my question is wondering, are there things that we can do around this table to help your officers stay safe, to keep our community safe? And so where are your areas of concern for officer safety?
Placed a 4 member minimum per shift based on some of the calls for service that we receive that could be outside of jurisdiction on the highways or in the Squamish Valley or more remote areas, say at the Mamquam FSR, that our members need to attend to, leaving at least 2 individuals within the Sea to Sky corridor or within the District of Squamish boundaries to effectively respond to a call for service, not putting their officer safety at risk. And myself and Sergeant Miller work really hard to make sure that we have a 6-member team. So we have 4 of those on each watches. And some of that diversification of teams, like the crime reduction team, is effectively a concern for officer safety out there. I'm not going to keep it secret. There's been several incidents that we have been part of lately of where our police officers have effectively been surrounded by individuals in the community of which have been very anti-police and have caused extensive concern to the point where we brought the emergency response team in to effectively execute a search warrant last week due to officer safety concerns. Those worry me because this is our family out there and these are our team members. I'm also a community member of Squamish. I've lived in the Squamish community for the last 10 years and I raised my kids here. And nobody wants to see a police officer injured out there. Nobody wants to see a community member injured out there. So are those concerns for us? Yes, absolutely. Those are concerns for us. These are concerns that we have effectively communicated to our partners, including Squamish Fire, BC Ambulance, bylaw conservation. I do know there are certain locations within the downtown core of where police are usually required to attend when any emergency responders are going in. And is that ramping up as of late? Absolutely it is. And is the concern for the safety of my team and of Nate's team a top priority? 100% it is a top priority, as well as the public safety of those who live in those areas and those who live around those areas.
Are you moving receipt of the?
Thanks very much.
report?
I'll move receipt.
Thank you very much. I'll second that. Would you like to speak to it at all?
Thank you for all the work you do and the annual statistics. Yes, I certainly dive into them myself as well. I really appreciate seeing the bare numbers. I absolutely understand there are sometimes we can read numbers like an increase in tickets don't necessarily mean an increase in some activity. It could mean that there's an increased effort in enforcement. So they do need to be taken with some insight. So thank you for bringing both the numbers and the insight for us. Thanks.
Thank you. Council, any other comments at this time? Go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, we'll support the motion to receive. As previously stated, thanks for being here and painting the picture for us in our community of where we're at. Although some of the statistics I think are challenging, I think it's an important conversation that we're having and that there are a number of our partners that are in this room and a commitment I think I hear from you and I definitely know around our team to make sure that we have a collaborative and cohesive approach that focuses on community safety really broadly. Everything from ensuring that folks have homes when they need them to being able to get the treatment that they need and integrating between VCH and RCMP and Helping Hands and all the partners that are here to try and create a safer environment for everybody. No doubt it's a challenging time in the past few weeks in particular. I think we all need to recognize have been really hard for everybody. And so appreciate your honesty in that conversation and the continued efforts that we have to both address the community safety component as well as everything else that's going on as things ramp up for the general busy summer season, things on the highway and so on and so forth. So I think just a thanks for the honesty and for the continued dialogue and definitely a commitment to continuing to work together to make sure that we can address the issues that we're seeing hopefully sooner rather than later.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you. Any other comments, Council? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate the information. The data is sort of interesting to sort of see and try and understand what it means. Appreciate everyone's effort. So hope everyone stays safe out there. I'm glad to hear that we may actually see the member sort of match our funding and because that's been sort of a long time challenge. Oh, right. to to get to that. And yeah, thank you for the presentation and all the work.
Councillor Greenlaw.
Yeah, I guess first and foremost, I'll express my thanks for all the work you do as well. We had a like firefighter for a day thing. I don't know what 2 years ago, and I realized that I will never be a firefighter, and I'm pretty sure I would suck equally at being a cop. So I appreciate the work you're doing because it's not for everybody, and it is important work. Just one comment about the. All the traffic infractions and not seeing a reduction in accidents. Just it's possible that there would have been an increase in accidents had there not been the traffic infractions. So just a thought, but appreciate all the information you came today. It's always a lot to think about when you guys give these presentations. And would it be possible to get a copy of this presentation as well after?
Maybe have it.
Anyways, yeah, but thank you very much.
Thank you. As others have said, just thank you very much for all the work that you and your team do. And if you could pass on the thanks to the folks working on the highway, it has been a noted presence. And I think the presence also likely will take time to have the effect of, if you go there, there will be enforcement. And that frankly hasn't been the case for quite a long time. So quite happy to see that. And heading down to Vancouver over the weekend, I saw some folks experiencing the enforcement, we'll say firsthand. So, and I think the challenges we're facing in the community are significant, but maintaining that community feel is also, I think, quite critical. So that shift, although I feel from the community team to the crime reduction piece, I understand the need for that. I want to make sure that we really leverage that remaining 20% if we're going to use those numbers to the maximum impact, and that's I think critical for our feeling of community and feeling of belonging, and that's for all the pieces of all the people that are all the pieces of the equation, but I also know operational realities are operational realities, and we want to make sure that everyone in the public is safe, as well as the members that are helping us remain safe. So, and that has to be a delicate balance in your realm, and I do appreciate having that open conversation here with everyone. So, with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Council, we'll take a 5-minute recess, and then we'll reconvene with the Youth Council. Thank you. All right, welcome back, everybody. We're on item 3.2, which is Squamish Youth Council annual presentation. And I'm going to pass it over to Councillor Stoner to set up the presentation. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and welcome to our delegates this afternoon to community and to council. We have some members of this year's Squamish Youth Council cohort with us to provide a presentation on the year that they have had. As you folks may remember, last summer, Councillor Pettingill, Councillor Greenlaw, and I were appointed to help lead and work with Squamish Youth Council. And we've been supported with the fine work of Christine McLeod to also help facilitate some of the programming that was delivered this year for Squamish Youth Council. And this afternoon, we have 4 youth council members out of our team of 18 who are here to talk about what we did over the past year. And so I'll pass it over to you folks to introduce yourselves and to jump into your presentation. I believe it'll be about a 15 to 20-minute presentation, and then there'll be some time for questions afterwards. And then we'd also like to take a picture once we're done.
Hi, thank you for welcoming us. We are here to tell you about our yearly report on what we have done this year in Youth Council. I'm Noah, a grade 11 student at House Sound.
I'm Ryan, I'm in grade 12.
I'm Zia, I'm also in grade 12.
I'm Sola, and I'm in grade 11. We'd also like to introduce some of our fellow youth council members. Let them introduce themselves.
It's just we got everything to say, but it gets recorded.
Oh.
Oh. Hi, I'm Melanie and I'm in grade 11 at House Sound.
I'm Melissa and I'm in grade 11 at House Sound as well.
I'm Izzy, I'm in grade 11 at House Sound.
I'm Chloe and I'm in grade 10 at Coast Mountain Academy. Okay, so in Squamish Youth Council, this is my second year of it. We do about a 3-hour meeting once every month, and so we've done 9 meetings now, I believe. And so the way our meetings are structured is we do a bit of working on our projects at the moment, which of course at the start of the year we didn't do a lot of. And the other bit of it, we do stuff like games, we do mock debates, we do votes like how you do on council we've done before. We do votes on how we're going to run our events this year. And so during the year, we started in October. That was our first meeting. That was the first time we met each other, and we talked about what was important to us. In November, we narrowed down our priorities for the year. So based on the pillars of the Youth Council, we decided what was most important to us. In December, we did the mock budgeting activity. We discussed our plans for the rest of the year, and we also helped with the community Christmas care and shoeboxes for Helping Hands. In January, we had past youth council members and the past mayor join us to review the strategy and review the pillars that we set forth, and we gave each of the pillars grades based on what we felt had been achieved by previous youth councils and by us, and it helped us really narrow down what our projects were going to be for the rest of the year.
The rest of the year, we really spent focused on our individual groups. We were delegated into individual groups to put on individual events, and we just put a lot of our energy into completion of those projects. We held the Youth Places and Spaces event for community engagement, which we'll talk about later. And then we debriefed that, and then we planned and executed our Rise Youth Summit, which was where we put our main focus this year as a council. And then in May, we did our Youth Unstoppable and Youth Excellence Awards, and we did some exercises about our personality styles and our communication styles, as well as a mock debate on age restrictions for e-bikes.
As you can see, a lot of our events this year were focused on community outreach and interacting with the youth in our community. And now we will introduce some of our events. All of our events, we put in a lot of hard work. All of our youth council members worked on our events, and we're going to introduce them to you now.
Places and Spaces community engagement event. We invited a bunch of business owners and people who have a lot of
leeway
on businesses, and we invited them to House Sound Secondary to talk about welcoming youth into their businesses and opportunities for sales. This event was mainly for like planting seeds in their minds so that hopefully in coming years and months and next councils, that those seeds can grow into full grown events.
So one of our main events of the year was the Rise Youth Summit, and this led out of our conversation around emerging adults as a pillar. So the event itself was designed to bridge the gap between youth leaving high school and either entering the working force or going into university, and also helping young adults in the community feel more confident with their plans going forwards. So the concept of Rise was to do a full day workshop where we invited speakers on multiple topics, like mental health. We had a speaker who did a session about martial arts, an intro to martial arts class. We had mending clothes. We had a panel of graduate students from the 2024 graduating class come and talk about their experiences after high school. And what we found was that everybody involved in Rise Youth Summit was extremely engaged, like from the speakers to the attendees to all the youth who had come to see what it was about. Everybody was very engaged, and we found that the community was supporting the event well, and we really wanted to put a focus on this event as a legacy event. So we wanted to make a blueprint that future youth councils could use to continue this event in years after this one.
In lieu of the skate night that was a huge hit last year for our youth council, unfortunately not being able to happen, we pivoted to the youth night in the afternoon, which was to be hosted at the Ledge. This event also unfortunately did not happen due to scheduling conflicts, but we learned a lot of lessons from it. This event, the youth night in the afternoon, was a blueprint that already existed in previous youth councils, so it was really important and really helpful that we had something that we could work off, a ledge that we could work off. And that's something we really want to reiterate in the next coming years of youth council, is that we want to set up things that people can essentially copy paste, that future youth councils can copy paste and be able to host events. And the idea that if we have events that would reoccur yearly, that we would build a bigger audience for them and hopefully have higher attendance. The goal of this event specifically was to create a space where youth could socialize and be themselves. We'll speak later on the 4 pillars of the Squamish Youth Strategy, and when we as a council came together and reviewed that youth strategy, we really found that places and spaces was an important thing that we wanted to hit. So this was to combat our need for that. The connection that we made, as Noah was saying, we had our Spaces and Places event earlier this year, so we were very fortunate in that our connection to the Ledge actually came from that event, showing the importance of doing events like that and engaging in the community in a meaningful way.
Our last event that we did this year was the Youth Unstoppable movie and the Youth Excellence Awards. We tried something new this year, and we collaborated with the House Sound Secondary Leadership Team to put together an event that kicked off Squamish Youth Week. We worked with 20 leadership students and our own group of 18 at House Sound to put together the movie night and awards. Our portion of the night was the Youth Excellence Awards, where we gave out over 40 finalists and winner awards for youth and adults who are involved and inspire youth in our community. Our goal was to celebrate the youth in our community and uplift them to continue to impact the community in a positive manner, and by recognizing excellent work and also recognizing the mentors in our community who continue to inspire the youth.
The youth strategy was a community document adopted by council in 2019, based on several years of feedback from youth from the ages of 14 to 24. Our group took the opportunity to review the youth strategy and give a bit of a report card on it. We gathered with past council members, the mayor, and a past mayor. Here we will talk about what we observed could be changed about the 4 pillars, including in this strategy what we did this year. During this meeting, we graded each of the pillars on how we felt they were working.
So emerging adults, back in one of our earliest meetings, we evaluated emerging adults and we ultimately gave it an F grade. This was based on how we felt youth council had done, how we felt the community as a whole had done, and how we felt council had done on supporting emerging adults in our community. So we decided it was going to be one of our main focuses for this year, and out of that rose the Rise Youth Summit project. Rise was, as I stated previously, built to help youth build those connections in the community and help them build those paths forwards into their next stage of life. We ultimately had a very successful event. I think our goal was to hit about 100 and we got 2/3 of that. We ended up with, as I said, a bunch of youth who were very engaged, very willing to listen to the speakers who had come there, and we ultimately now have this event as a blueprint for future youth councils to continue and work and build on this, and hopefully host it again in the future.
As I was kind of touching on before, the places and spaces pillar, it earned a C on the achievement of what was being done in order to support it. But we still decided to put a lot of our efforts towards it this year just because we felt like it was something very important. I'm sure you all have met and encountered or have teenagers who always say that there is not a lot to do in this town. So in order to combat that, we hosted the Places and Spaces event at the beginning of the year to try to get a goal and commitment from businesses in hopes that they would be open to creating places and spaces like we want to see. Going forward, something that we would like to save to council is the idea that youth council could simply give businesses blueprints such as Youth Night in the afternoon, where we could just hand off templates and the businesses themselves could use that to create their own events and host it themselves. That's something we did talk about a lot in the Places and Spaces, the actual event that we hosted, was that businesses are willing to engage in the community and willing to be these places where youth can congregate, but it just is so hard logistically to put all the time and effort into planning them. So if youth council could eliminate the stress of the template and the business could just do the hosting, we think that would be a very viable strategy.
The next pillar we will touch on is services and programs. We couldn't really agree on a grade for services and programs when we graded them at this beginning of the year because we thought it was a multi-layered issue and we found that many of the solutions were out of our control as youth council. We would recommend for council and for future youth councils to find ways to coordinate with other organizations that deliver services and programs. For example, the Foundry and Youth Services, to make sure they are providing services and programs we need and want. We also think there could be better advertising in our community of programs that already exist here in Squamish. And there was also a call for more shadowing and volunteer opportunities for youth.
Speak Up in Leadership. Speak Up in Leadership got a D grade from our group. To make this pillar better, we decided to host the Youth Excellence Awards. By doing this, we recognize youth who work hard to make our community better, and we recognize mentors who help to inspire youth to speak up and be a leader.
So these are our recommendations for council and also for future youth councils. Youth are very busy, hard to reach. We found that really hard when we were trying to advertise our events for other teenagers. So we believe that spending more time in outreach to drive attendance could be a major goal for both council and youth councils in the future.
Now that Youth Council is a more established program in our community, we have 5 years under our belt now, we would like to recommend that each new council to look at past events and kind of pick and choose from things that happened in previous years. As you were saying, the more we do an event yearly, the bigger attendance we think we'll get. And it's just will be easier to delegate and easier to figure out your own priorities as an individual council if some of the stress of hosting these events are taken off your shoulders because there's already a template or a blueprint. We've been saying that word word a lot, but that already exists from previous years?
This year, we split our time between learning skills that you as council use regularly, such as community engagement, budgeting, and we even did some debate. And we also used our time to do youth outreach and events. We recommend that future councils continue to balance both. We found it very useful.
We had the biggest youth council ever this year with 18 youth. Having more people on each project or event made it more fun and a much lighter load to deal with. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Thank you very much for the presentation. And just to let you know, we have Councillor French joining remotely today, so he's on online. Council, sorry, I'm trying to. Thank you, Council. This council, not that council. Council, questions for council. Councillor Hamilton, go ahead.
Thanks very much for the work you've done all year. I've never served on youth council, but if it's anything like serving on council, it certainly has kept my brain busy. Even if I'm not sitting in the chair, my chip up here ends up running on these matters. If you were to think about the thing that kept you most engaged during the year, what kept your brain running thinking about this thing? I don't mean like actual time spent doing it, but like time spent thinking about it. What thing would that be for each of you?
If I could take the floor first, for me personally, I think it was that, we have these events that we need to host and we need people to be in seats. Like we set out to make a difference in our community, and there's tickets that we need to sell, and let's get her going. Anyone else? Ryan?
I also think it was really cool. I was just excited to come back to youth council to connect with other youth whose brains kind of work the same as me and who are motivated to make changes in our community.
For me, it was also the coming back to council. I was on it last year, and I was so incredibly happy and pleased with the events that we pulled off that I was so excited to bring that back to this year's youth council. And a lot of time and thinking just went into thinking about the logistics of it.
For me, I would have to say it was just the planning and being part of these events that really excited me.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Other questions, council? Councillor Greenlaw, go ahead.
Thank you very much for that excellent presentation. I was just wondering, we have conversations sometimes about where Squamish Youth Council should live. And it seems to me like part of, were you happy with the breakdown of what your term entailed? Do you want it to be more events? Do you want it to be less events? Would you like it to be more civic governance pieces like that?
I really enjoyed the events that we hosted this year. I also think it's important for us to learn about things that you do, like council things. But yeah, I think how we did it this year, kind of half and half, worked really well. So we got to learn about how council works and also do things for the community.
Yeah, I remember kind of talking at the beginning of the year. It's like youth council, if we wanted it to, could be so much more than just hosting events. There's a lot of other avenues that we could try exploring. So it'd be interesting to pose that question more in the future, maybe asking individual councilors is there anything else that you would like to see out of this program?
I'd love to do more debates, but that's a me thing.
Okay, Ryan.
I agree with Stola. I really liked the half and half setup we had. I loved organizing the events and taking part of that, but I also loved debating with my peers because a lot of the opinions were surprisingly very opinionated, and it was a very fun thing.
Okay, thanks.
I feel like being a fly on the wall of that debate sounds like fun to me. Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, compared to when you started, did you have thoughts of like, I think this is what a council probably is or what a councillor is probably like? Has any of that shifted where you are now? It's like, oh, wow, these folks are completely different than I thought they would be, or what a council is seems different than I thought, or is it, did you sort of, it was about what you expected in terms of council?
For me, the voting process was slightly different than what I had anticipated, but besides that, most of the things were what I thought.
Okay, we're going to take that as the one. If you have some further thoughts on that as we go on here, continue. I was, so it's like in your presentation, you spoke about having sort of some preset events or a menu of events that the youth council could choose from, or maybe even the business community could choose from. Were there I guess, which ones were you most interested in? Because there is a suite of different things that youth council's done over its time. And have you looked through that sort of back catalog, and where just thoughts on those pieces that are there that you've created as well?
Just off the top of my head, I think one that was very missed this year was the skate night, which was a big hit last year. Being able to host something at Burnham Park, which just unfortunately logistically wasn't able to happen this year. Another one that didn't happen this year that I was disappointed to see not happen was a youth market where like vendors could come and sell. That was another one that had previously been hosted and didn't happen this year. Anyone else?
From this year and previous years, I really like the Youth Excellence Awards. I think they're
Yes.
a great way to get the community involved because it's not just for the youth, it's also for the adults in the community and it recognizes them.
I would agree that that's an important aspect, recognizing the people that help the youth as well.
Also, one that I haven't seen, but I've heard a lot about is the Cubs Den. And I think the concept of that is really cool. I think it's just not something we were able to do either these past 2 years.
I really enjoyed the skate night last year, and I hope that later years we'll be able to put it on. The Youth Excellence Awards are amazing. I would love to see another youth summit in the future.
Yeah, especially since we've done so much of the hard work of making the blueprint, that it would be really interesting to see next year how they can improve upon that.
I'd love to see a more consistent youth night in the afternoon or somewhere where youth can hang out. I think it's really important for our community.
On a regular basis.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Councillor Greenlaw.
I just have one more question. This year, we kind of went into our first meeting not knowing what the year would look like. Do you think it would be beneficial for kind of these counselors going into the next year's Squamish Youth Council to just be like, FYI, this is the project we're working on this year. You can choose the content of it. Let's move forward. Or do you think it's better to have the youth have more say in it and potentially have a lower turnout, less effective project?
I give a bias.
My personal opinion on this would be to have a plan, but have it be a suggestion for future youth council. So if you went into the next meeting and you said, hey, these are some events that we could run, here's a really great background for how we ran them previously, vote on if you'd like to do them or not, that would be helpful. But what do you guys think?
I think Mayor Herford's analogy of a menu was very good. If you like having a lot of options available for people to pick and choose what they were interested in or pick and choose what they want to do. I mean, we keep saying it again and again, but it really is beneficial to have the blueprint and the templates for these events. It just takes so much of the pressure off.
Yeah, I feel like having suggestions of all these events would be great because this year we were able to very individually pick what priorities we chose and what events we specifically wanted to put on.
Thank you. In some iterations of youth council, there's been discussions of sort of intergenerational work? Was that something that ever came up at your table this time around?
So we did talk about it a lot when we were doing our pillars because it's part of emerging adults, and we really wanted to host an event in the community that would connect young adults and youth just coming out of high school. Unfortunately, we didn't quite get the kind of intergenerational connection that we wanted through that because we only ended up having a bunch of high school students sign up. But in the future, I mean, I personally would love to see an event where youth could connect with both adults in the community and older adults in the community who aren't as involved with the day-to-day goings as Squamish. Anybody else?
I think that was sort of our goal with Rise as well, which is what Ryan just touched on. But I think even with our speakers, we were trying to connect like graduates of 2024 to some of the younger
Just entering high school.
yeah, just entering high school, just graduating kids in our community. So even just learning about others' experiences on graduating, I think was helpful, but it would definitely be better if we could dive deeper into that in future years.
Thank you. Any other questions, Council? I don't see any other hands, so go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
I would like to move receipt of the presentation from Squamish Youth Council.
Are you seconding that, Councillor Greenlaw?
I am.
Would you like to speak to it?
Yeah, thank you so much for being here today and for all the work that has gone into both this presentation and the year of work that you folks have put into it. I think there's a few things that I definitely take away from the presentation, and having had the pleasure of working with you all for the past year, along with a few council colleagues. It's really about how Squamish Youth Council is intended to support you folks as leaders for the youth cohort in our community. And you folks did such an incredible job of reaching out to other programs. So the example of partnering with House Sound Leadership in order to deliver a joint event for the first time. The Spaces and Places community engagement work, where it was like a call to businesses and really a pitch to them is what you folks did, was like, this is the reason why you might want to host a youth specific event, because you can actually make money doing it. Like, there's a lot of us who are looking for places to be. So you folks did a really excellent job this year of really reaching out beyond just the 18 folks who make up Youth Council, to really bringing more folks in and amplifying the voice of youth across our community. There was also things that weren't touched on, like a number of opinion pieces that youth wrote for the Squamish Chief that I know were read by many folks in our community as well. The other thing that I was really struck by was the work that we did to review the Squamish Youth Strategy. It's been 5 years that this document has been guiding the work that we do to try and elevate how we serve youth in our community and how we show up for you folks. And one thing that I've been reflecting on a lot is like the role that Squamish Youth Council has in actually advancing the individual pillars. So Youth Council is actually a call under one of the pillars, the Speak Up and Leadership. Unfortunately, it still gets a D, but we've been running it for 5 years. And what I think your presentation really showed was the work that Youth Council does actually intends to advance different portions of the youth strategy every year, depending on what the interest is of the group. And so that's a piece that I don't think we had really fully understood of what Youth Council might be able to do when we first envisioned it. We first envisioned it, I think, kind of as a mirror council, and that you guys just learned what it was that we do here. But really, it's been this organic way of amplifying the other components of the youth strategy that need some vision to them. And so those are pieces that I'm taking back, and I know that we improve this every year. Thank you very much for the very specific recommendations on how we maybe do this better next year, because that's definitely something that we reflect on every year before we make the call for the next one. So thanks for being here. Thanks for the presentation. Thanks for all the work.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Greenlaw, and then I have Councillor French.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming to present to us today. I was asked recently what my favorite part of being a counselor has been so far, and I said youth council. So it's been a really enjoyable experience for me. I really hope it has been for you too. It's been really great to watch how you work in the community and to hear you advocate for your peers, you know? So, I mean, what I heard from you loud and clear is for the love of God, more events. That's what I hear from you. More spaces for the youth to be present and to be able to enjoy themselves in our community as well, and to feel like they're part of the community. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for all your work this year. It's really been a pleasure to work with you. You're a very inspirational group of young people, and yeah, I look forward to seeing what you do in the future. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor French.
Thanks, Mayor Herford. I appreciate the presentation. And I think that for me, the most valuable thing coming out of it is the thoughts on the youth strategy review. That's valuable. That helps us improve the program moving forward. And I love how just straight you all were with us. Those were some pretty low grades, and it made it pretty clear that we, council, and the district have a bit of work to make the youth council program all that it can be and all that it should be, and increase the value that it brings to our community. So to the 18 members in the council, thanks for your work.
Thank you. Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, I've really been thankful to have been part of the youth council and to see your leadership. The world is a pretty dark place a lot of the time, and it gives me a lot of hope to spend some time with you folks and see how you are changing our community. I think the events piece, yeah, I can really see your desire to get in there and make the community better and want to really drive those things firsthand. Some reflection on when we did the budgeting and the debates and so on. One piece that I'm curious about if we can do a better job of or do a bit more. I saw some really strong and fascinating opinions. And even when we were trying to decide on the debate topic last time, it's like, whoa. And so I really enjoyed hearing what all of you had to say. It's very clear that a lot of the conversations we hear about adults having, you folks are thinking and having questions about those same things. And so understanding how we can dig more into that piece too, as we make decisions as a council, I think is something I'm particularly interested in. But I really appreciate the reflections and the feedback, and sort of sad there's just one more official meeting. Just hope we can keep these relationships going, and you have our contact info, and so encourage you to keep being leaders. And if you have questions about something or you want to push on something, just reach out to any of us, and we'll be happy to sit down and listen some more. And thank you so much for your efforts throughout the year.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yeah, thank you for all the work that you have done this year. I know that high school is a busy time, and there's a lot of competing interests for your time and attention. So thank you very much for serving your community in this way. Often I hear that youth councils are the leaders of tomorrow, but you've proven that you're leading today. And thank you very much for that. I've enjoyed seeing my council colleagues, sort of the chat between meetings and so on, being more involved with youth council, I think worked well this year, and also led to your sort of feedback and opinions making their way to the council chambers directly through the councillors that have been working with you, as well as directly here today. Councillor Pettingill spoke about all the things that can maybe keep us up at night about thinking about the challenges of the world. And I've said for years now, and I believe it still to be true, that I don't need to look for the things that keep me up at night. There's plentiful. But when I look for things that help me sleep at night, it's that we've got such a strong group of leaders in our youth, and we are and these seats, I wouldn't be surprised at all if a youth council member found their way to these seats in pretty short order. So thank you very much, and enjoy the last meeting as youth council. So thank you. So I will call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. And then I will move that we terminate this meeting. Second by Councillor Stoner. All in favor? There we go. Motion carries. Meeting is terminated. And now we want to do a photo. All right. What's the vision?